My gold-digging wife only loves my money. But I prepared before she could carry out her plan. It's hard to believe how much has changed in just a year. A year ago, I was stuck in a marriage that felt like a never-ending battle, constantly fighting to prove my worth to a woman who saw me as little more than a resource. But now, I'm free. I'm finally free. Hey, before I dive into the details, let me ask for a quick favor. My channel's been struggling a bit lately, and if you like what I'm doing, subscribing is one of the best ways to support me. It's quick, it's free, and it helps me keep bringing you the content you enjoy. Thanks so much for your support. Let's keep this channel growing together. Now, let's get into it. I'm Kyle, 34 years old. Up until last year, I was a senior project manager at one of those big corporate tech firms, the kind that works you to the bone but pays just enough to keep you coming back. I had been there almost a decade, which is almost a decade too long. Honestly, I never dreamed of being a corporate slave. I wanted to start my own gaming company when I was younger, but I stuck with the job because it paid $110,000 a year, plus bonuses, and gave me just enough stability to survive. That stability was important because Sarah, my wife of 5 years, managed to burn through just about every penny I made. She's 32, but she acted like she was still 22 and had no concept of responsibility. We met at my buddy Dave's wedding 7 years ago. She was the maid of honor, gorgeous, confident, and a little bit smart-mouthed in a way that made you want to impress her. Back then, she worked as a marketing consultant for local boutiques that barely paid her bills. I was making about $85,000 a year, had just bought my first condo, and honestly, I think that's what attracted her more than anything else. The first 2 years of our marriage were okay, not perfect, but decent. Sarah had this way of constantly complaining about her job, how her feminist studies degree wasn't being respected in the corporate world, and how the patriarchy was holding her back from landing her dream job. Meanwhile, I was busting my ass, grinding 60 to 70-hour weeks, just to cover the bills and fund the life she insisted we needed. It was always something more, always something better. If I got a 5% raise, she'd ask why it wasn't 8%. If I brought home flowers, she'd talk about how her friend's husband surprised her with weekend trips. There was always comparison, always a sense that no matter what I did, it wasn't enough. After 18 months of dating, we got married. Her parents covered the cost of the wedding, but it turned out my $15,000 contribution ended up covering most of it, while her parents took credit for paying. She insisted on a prenup, claiming she had a trust fund worth $30,000 that would mature when she turned 35. She wanted to make sure that money was protected, but I was too naive to see it for what it really was. I paid for the lawyer, drafted the prenup, and signed on the dotted line. The truth is, I didn't realize then how much it was all just setting me up to be exploited. The problem started when we bought a house. I put down $110,000 from selling my condo, and Sarah contributed exactly $0. But she insisted that both our names be on the mortgage and everything else. What's yours is mine, and what's mine is mine, she joked, making me feel like a sucker for being generous. But I was still in love, or at least I thought I was, and that love kept me blind to the reality of what was happening. Once we moved in, the demand started piling up. She decided that the kitchen, which was perfectly functional, needed a $40,000 renovation. Then, about 6 months later, it was the master bathroom, which needed work for $25,000 so. I worked more hours, took on side gigs, and delayed vacations just to keep up with her vision of the life we were supposed to have. My parents started to notice the changes. My dad pulled me aside during one of the rare visits I had with him. Sarah was always too busy to see my family and asked if I was happy. I brushed it off and told him I was just tired from work. But the truth was, I was exhausted from walking on eggshells in my own home. Everything had to be her way: the furniture, the vacations, even which friends we could see. My college buddies were immature, my work colleagues were boring corporate drones, and my family was too far away to make regular visits. Meanwhile, her friends, who she described as amazing boss babes, deserved weekly dinners at expensive restaurants. Her family needed regular gifts and visits. Her dreams deserved unconditional support, financial and otherwise. By year 3, Sarah had quit her marketing job to find herself, which meant a series of expensive hobbies and potential career paths that lasted no more than a few months at a time. There was the pottery phase, which cost $2,500 in equipment. Then, there was the amateur photography business with $4,200 spent on cameras and lenses. After that, she tried interior design courses for $3,80 so. Finally, She started her wellness influencer brand, which became her identity, but only made her about $200 a month in affiliate commissions. Meanwhile, I got promoted to senior project manager, overseeing a team of 12 people and a $25 million portfolio for the company. My salary bumped up to $128.0 so, plus performance bonuses. But that didn't change anything at home. Sarah cycled through jobs, quitting every 8 months. She was always between opportunities, but her wellness brand on Instagram, with its 1.20 followers, was doing just enough to keep her distracted from reality. By the time I was promoted, Sarah had already cycled through 4 different jobs, none of which lasted longer than 8 months. She'd started a wellness brand on Instagram, and while it was cute for a while, it didn't pay the bills. The Instagram hustle barely brought in $200 a month in affiliate commissions, but it was her thing. She spent hours each day working on content, taking selfies with products she'd convinced me to buy while I worked long hours. While I was grinding away, stuck at my desk with sad desk lunches, she was living her best life, posting pictures of elaborate meals and fitness routines with captions about rejecting hustle culture and nourishing the body. It was almost a joke, her lifestyle of wellness, while she was actively draining our finances. She'd sleep in until 9 or 10 a.m. and spend the rest of the day creating content or engaging with her followers. Meanwhile, I woke up at 5:30 a.m. to squeeze in a workout before heading to work by 7 a.m. My days were filled with stress and deadlines, but it didn't matter. I was just the one paying for all her Instagram ambitions. One weekend, my boss Kevin invited the management team and their spouses to his lake house for a getaway. I had been busting my ass on a major project for the past 3 months, working 80-hour weeks, and this was supposed to be a chance to unwind, celebrate, and network. But Sarah didn't care about any of that. The moment we got in the car to drive up, she started complaining. The car was too cramped, even though it was a BMW 5 Series. The weather was too hot. My playlist was too basic. I kept my mouth shut, reminding myself that this weekend was important for my career. Make a good impression. Don't let her ruin this. When we arrived, Kevin's house was everything you could imagine: lakefront property with a dock, 5 bedrooms, high-end everything. It should have been the perfect getaway, but Sarah immediately latched onto Kevin's wife, Lisa, and their friend Amber, who was married to another manager. Within an hour, they were laughing and chatting like old friends. Sarah was name-dropping luxury brands and wellness retreats, like they were everyday topics in our household. I was grabbing drinks for the girls when I overheard them talking on the deck. Amber was asking Sarah how she handled being married to me. "God, oh, how you do it," Amber said. "Kyle seems so intense about work." Sarah laughed. That condescending laugh that made my stomach turn. "This marriage feels like a prison sometimes," she said, almost casually. "I swear, I can't breathe with him constantly checking our bank accounts and questioning every purchase." I froze, the sodas in my hands suddenly feeling much heavier. I had never heard her say something like that. "He makes good money, right?" Amber asked. "Yeah," Sarah replied, "but what's the point? He's so damn cheap. Do you know he actually suggested I get a real job last month instead of supporting my brand? Like, sorry, I'm not selling my soul to some corporate master like you did, Kyle." She mockingly raised her voice, not realizing I was standing right behind her. I stood there, frozen, as my wife of 5 years reduced our entire relationship to a prison sentence, one that she was stuck in for financial security. 5 years of sacrificing everything: my free time, my health, my friendships, and my dreams just so she could laugh about it with people she'd known for all of 3 months. The worst part was that this wasn't even the first time. 3 months earlier, she had said the same thing during brunch with her cousin. Marriage is like voluntarily putting yourself under house arrest, but with better food. And the comment she made 6 months before that, when I suggested we start a family: "Let's not add more bars to the cage, babe." I don't remember much after that. I somehow made it through the rest of the weekend, smiling, pretending everything was fine. But inside, something had broken. Something fundamental had snapped. That expensive deck with its fancy imported sodas. Her voice echoing in my head, it all became crystal clear. If this marriage was her prison, I would set her free. On the drive home, she complained about everything. How Kevin's wife, Lisa, had been showing off her newly renovated kitchen. How the bed sheets at the lake house weren't high enough thread count. How embarrassing it was that I only got a 3% raise. Especially when Kevin mentioned others getting 5%. She even started talking about the director position opening up next year at my company. "We could finally renovate the backyard," she said. "I've been thinking about one of those natural swimming pools." She was already planning for the next set of demands. I nodded and made all the right noises while my mind raced. I remembered the prenup, how she insisted on one to protect her future trust fund, which was worth $30 so. But I also remembered the one thing the prenup didn't cover, everything else, including our joint assets. That was when I started to think, what if there were no joint assets? Monday morning, I called in sick for the first time in 3 years. While Sarah was off at a business brunch with her Instagram friends, charging $120 to our joint credit card, I made 2 important calls. The first was to Tyler, my old college roommate who had become a divorce attorney. The second was to my bank. Tyler, buddy. Long time no talk, I said when he picked up. I could hear the familiarity in his voice. I need your help, I continued, outlining the situation. There was a long pause. Man, I'm sorry you're going through this, but you came to the right guy. Her prenup works in your favor. She can't touch your $400 wunk or the down payment you made on the house, but we need to document everything else carefully. Don't confront her, don't change your behavior, and most importantly, don't move money around suspiciously. Courts hate that. That afternoon, I opened a new bank account at a different bank. I started gathering records, every contribution I'd made to our joint expenses, every major purchase, and, most importantly, every derogatory comment Sarah had made about our marriage on social media. I took screenshots of her flirty exchanges with her ex, Jules, and her constant designer purchases while telling me we needed to cut back. For the next 6 weeks, I lived a double life. On the surface, nothing changed. I still worked long hours. I still acknowledged her complaints with practiced patience. I still funded her brand collaborations that mysteriously required new outfits and salon visits. But behind the scenes, I executed my exit strategy with the precision of a project manager. Phase 1 was financial separation. I redirected my next paycheck to my new account, leaving just enough in our joint account to avoid suspicion. Phase 2 was documenting her behavior. I set up a small recording device in our living room, capturing conversations like her 1-hour phone chat with Amber about how settling for stability over passion was slowly killing her soul. And Phase 3 was securing allies. I reconnected with friends she'd pushed away, including Dave, whose wedding we had met at, and his wife Megan. They had been waiting for me to wake up and see Sarah for who she really was. As I continued with my double life, I gathered more evidence. I connected with friends Sarah had pushed away over the years, including Dave and Megan. They had been waiting for me to wake up and see Sarah for who she truly was. Dave admitted during our first lunch in over a year that Sarah had tried to convince Megan that Dave was cheating on her. She had fabricated a story about him buying a gift for another woman, but it turned out it was for his mom's birthday. When I heard that, it hit me she had been willing to manipulate people close to us for her own benefit. Megan had been supportive, and she filled me in on more details I hadn't known. She told me you were controlling, jealous, and she tried to show me proof of the things you were doing, Megan said. But it never matched up with what I knew about you. Man, the real shock came when I got an email from Lisa, Kevin's wife. Sarah had accidentally sent it to her instead of Amber. The email contained details of her exit plan, and it was all laid out for me to see. Sarah had been planning to divorce me once I hit the director level, once my salary hit $175 so. She even mentioned her side business account that I had no idea about. And she had been in communication with a divorce attorney who specialized in maximizing settlements for women who felt they were trapped in financial abuse. I forwarded the email to Tyler immediately, and his response came almost instantaneously. Holy dude, this is better than anything we could have hoped for. She's done. It was like a dam had broken. Sarah had been planning everything for months, probably even years. The messages, the lies, the manipulation, it was all starting to come together. I realized that every interaction with her had been a calculation, a move to gain more control over my money and resources. She was a master at manipulation. But what she hadn't counted on was me being as strategic as I was. In those next weeks, I uncovered more and more. Her networking lunches were actually just shopping sprees. The business conference she went to in San Diego had been at the same hotel where her ex, Jules, was speaking. She'd borrowed $3.00 from our emergency fund for a medical procedure, which turned out to be cosmetic fillers and Botox. I couldn't even look at her the same way anymore. The lies, the deceit, it was overwhelming. But the real turning point came when I found the credit card statements showing she had been running up over $12.00 in debt on a separate card I didn't know about. This was all on top of the lavish spending she had already done, while claiming we needed to cut back on expenses. The final straw came when Sarah announced that she'd been invited to an exclusive influencer retreat in Sedona, all expenses paid. Of course, but she needed me to give her $1.50 for incidentals. At this point, I was done. I agreed, playing along, and acted excited about the opportunity. Really? You're not going to give me a hard time about this? She asked, suspiciously. I smiled. Not at all. Your brand is growing. This could be a great opportunity. She looked at me, narrowing her eyes, before breaking into a wide grin. Finally, you're starting to understand how this influencer thing works. Investments now lead to big returns later. The irony almost made me laugh out loud. The moment her flight took off for Sedona, the real work began. I took a week off work, my first actual vacation in 3 years. With the help of Dave, Tyler, and 2 movers I hired, I packed up all my personal belongings and moved them to a storage unit. I cataloged everything, photographed every item in the house, including receipts. I installed cameras with clear notification stickers at all the entrances. I changed the passwords on all our joint credit cards and had them sent to my new email. Then, I met with Kevin. He had been supportive throughout this process, and I needed his help. I showed him everything: the bank records showing Sarah's secret account, the time-stamped recordings of her disparaging our marriage, the screenshots of her flirtatious messages with her ex. Kevin was shocked but fully behind me. I didn't know it was this bad, he said. She was asking me questions about your finances and your compensation package. Now I get it. The final piece came from our bank, which showed Sarah had been transferring $750 to $1.20 a month into a private account for the past 18 months. The money came directly from my paychecks, since she hadn't contributed a dime. By my calculations, she had siphoned off over $19.00 in the last year alone while claiming she needed more for household expenses. It was the clearest proof that I had been living with a stranger, someone who was using me to fuel her own desires. With everything in place, I was ready. The day before Sarah was due back, Tyler filed the divorce papers. We also submitted an emergency petition to freeze all joint assets while an investigation into her financial fraud was conducted. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, granted the petition within hours. I didn't go home that night. I checked into a hotel instead. Tyler had advised me to stay away from the house for both legal and personal safety reasons. People do crazy things when cornered. He'd warned me. For the first time in years, I slept through the night without anxiety dreams. I didn't wake up in a cold sweat about our finances or Sarah's constant demands. It felt like I had put down a 100-pound backpack I hadn't even realized I was carrying. The next day, Sarah's first call came through shortly after her flight landed. The phone rang at 8:47 p.m. and when I saw her name pop up on the screen, I felt nothing but calm. I had already made my decision. I had already taken back control. "Kyle, why is there a notice on our door?" she demanded when I picked up. "And why isn't my key working?" "Check your email," I replied, keeping my tone even, not giving her the satisfaction of hearing any anger in my voice. "What? I just got off the plane. What the hell is going on?" Her voice was rising, but I wasn't about to get rattled. "Check your email," I repeated. I hung up, letting her stew on it. Within minutes, my phone was flooded with calls, texts, and voicemails, each more hysterical than the last. I let them all go to voicemail. Tyler had been very clear: no direct communication, only through attorneys. As I sat there, I could feel the weight of the moment lift. The knots in my stomach that had been there for years slowly started to loosen. I was free. She could rant and rave all she wanted, but I wasn't getting dragged into it. I had already won. From the increasingly unhinged messages I received, I pieced together what had happened. She'd arrived home to find the locks changed, the legal notice on the door, and the emergency freeze on all our joint accounts. That's when the full panic set in. Her messages quickly became more desperate. "You can't just lock me out of my own house. This is illegal. Answer your phone. You coward. Where am I supposed to go? All my things are in there. You're going to regret this. I've got friends who are lawyers too. This is financial abuse. I'm calling the police." At 11:23 p.m., I received one final text: "You psychopath. You won't get away with this." I forwarded it to Tyler with the caption, "Exhibit A of threatening behavior." The next morning, Dave called. "Dude, Sarah's on a rampage. She's calling everyone we know, telling them you had a mental breakdown, cleaned out the accounts, and abandoned her. She even called Kevin, claiming you've been embezzling from the company to fund a gambling addiction." I had to laugh. For the first time in ages, I felt a real sense of relief. Kevin already knows everything. I told Dave. He's the one who helped me document her side account. Sarah had really gone full tilt, hadn't she? trying to spin a story that painted me as the crazy one while she continued to manipulate people into taking her side. But the truth had a way of cutting through all the lies. Kevin, Dave, and Megan, everyone knew what was really going on. The next few days were full of reports coming in from friends and colleagues. Sarah was telling anyone who would listen that I had a breakdown, that I had locked her out and emptied our accounts. She had even called my parents, spinning a story about how I had changed recently, becoming controlling, paranoid, and possibly in need of psychiatric help. Thankfully, I had already briefed my parents on what was really happening. My dad's response had been classic. "About damn time, son. That woman's been bleeding you dry for years." Then came the emergency hearing. Sarah showed up with a tiger of a divorce attorney, a woman known for bleeding husbands dry. They came prepared for war, ready to fight dirty with accusations about my controlling behavior, financial abuse, and abandonment. Sarah had clearly been coached on how to present herself as the victim. But what they weren't prepared for was Tyler's methodical presentation. He had all the receipts, literally. Bank records showing Sarah's secret account, timestamped recordings of her disparaging our marriage, screenshots of her flirtatious exchanges with her ex, Jules, the email she had accidentally sent to Lisa about her exit plan, the affidavit from Kevin, Lisa, Dave, and Megan about her behavior, credit card statements showing her lavish spending while she was unemployed, and most damning of all, the evidence of her consulting multiple divorce attorneys while I was working late, all while pretending to be a supportive wife. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, had been neutral at first, but as Tyler presented the evidence, I saw her remove her glasses halfway through and take a sharp breath. "Mrs. Reynolds," she said, looking directly at Sarah, "are you familiar with the term divorce planning? It's when someone secretly prepares to leave their spouse while continuing to benefit from the marriage and deliberately increasing their spouse's financial obligations." Sarah's attorney tried to interrupt, but the judge shut her down. "The court takes a very dim view of such behavior." Very dim indeed. Sarah tried to counter with tears and confusion, playing the role of the helpless woman who had just been scared and exploring her options. But the evidence was undeniable. By the end of the hearing, the judge had ruled in my favor. She kept the freeze on all joint accounts, ordered Sarah to provide a full accounting of her secret account, granted me exclusive use of the house until the next hearing, and ordered Sarah to pay her own legal fees from her separate funds. When we left the courtroom, I finally looked directly at Sarah. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide the shock and fury on her face. She tried to approach me, but Tyler stepped between us, his voice cold. "Save it for your affidavit." Sarah didn't like that. She managed to catch up to me outside the courtroom, her heels clicking on the floor as she hurried after me. "Kyle, this is insane," she hissed. "You know most of that was taken out of context. We can still fix this if you call off the dogs now." I didn't even flinch. "The time for fixing things was before you started planning to drain me, financially," I said calmly. "Everything's in writing." "Sarah, your own words." Her expression shifted then. The mask of wounded innocence fell away, and I saw the calculating woman I'd been living with for the past 5 years. "You think you've won," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "But you have no idea what I'm capable of. I made you, Kyle. I can destroy you just as easily." I just smiled. "You might want to be careful with the threats. This is still a courthouse." Her attorney pulled her away, whispering urgently in her ear. And as they left, I felt no fear, only relief. The prison doors were finally opening. News traveled fast, especially in the circles Sarah and I used to run in. Within days, 2 distinct narratives emerged. Sarah's story was that I had some sort of mental breakdown, maybe related to job stress, or possibly drugs, and had locked her out during a business trip. She painted me as the villain, claiming I had vindictively emptied the accounts and abandoned her. Her version of events quickly spread. But it was a house of cards, and it didn't take long for the truth to come out. My version, that she had been planning to divorce me for a better settlement, while secretly connecting with her ex, gained traction as more details leaked. The most surprising ally came from Amber, who had been one of Sarah's friends at the lake house weekend. Apparently, Amber had her own regrets about enabling Sarah and decided to do the right thing. "I've been married for a while now," Amber explained when we met for coffee. "The way she talked about you, about marriage in general, started to really bother me. What if my husband had someone like Sarah whispering poison in his ear about me?" Amber forwarded me dozens of messages, showing how Sarah had bragged about manipulating me. One of them read, "Kyle thinks that new Peloton was for both of us," as if I'd let him sweat all over my bike. And then there was another one. "Lau just told Kyle my car broke down and needed $900 for repairs. Hello. New Botox appointment." The text made me sick. I couldn't believe how casually Sarah had treated me. How she thought of me as just a means to an end. But now Amber's conscience had gotten the better of her. And she was helping me in ways I hadn't expected. In the days that followed, Sarah was still trying to manipulate everyone around her. She called Kevin, claiming she had information about company improprieties that might interest him. But Kevin, being the stand-up guy he was, recorded the call and sent it to his attorney. Pretty sure that violates her NDA, he said, laughing. She's looking at penalties if you want to pursue it. The entire situation had spiraled out of control, and Sarah had become the architect of her own downfall. It was almost poetic, in a way. The things she had planned to use against me were now working in my favor. 2 days after I blocked Sarah's number and stopped responding to her messages, I received a call from Dave. Dude, you won't believe this, he said. Sarah's been calling everyone we know, asking for money or places to stay. She even contacted Kevin, claiming she had some dirt on the company. You really need to see what she's doing now. I didn't care about her anymore, not really. But I did care about how she was trying to manipulate people. Especially now that everything had already gone public. Did Kevin give her the money? I asked, laughing at the absurdity of the situation. Heck no, Dave replied. We offered her the couch for the night, but that's about it. She was livid when we wouldn't take her side. She left this morning, pissed as hell. It wasn't just Dave who was dealing with her drama. Several mutual friends reported similar stories. She was telling anyone who would listen that I was the crazy one, that I was controlling and abusive. She was working overtime to paint herself as the victim. But I could tell it was starting to backfire. People were starting to see through her act. The nuclear explosion came 3 days later during the emergency hearing. Sarah showed up with her divorce attorney, a woman who was known for ruthlessly going after husbands. They were ready for war, armed with accusations of financial abuse and abandonment. But they were unprepared for Tyler's methodical presentation. Tyler laid out the facts: bank records showing her secret account, time-stamped recordings of her disparaging our marriage, screenshots of her flirtations with her ex, and the email she sent detailing her plans to divorce me after my promotion. It was a perfect storm, and Sarah had no way to defend herself. The judge, a no-nonsense woman who didn't mince words, took one look at the evidence and dismissed Sarah's claims. She turned to Sarah and said, "Are you familiar with the term divorce planning? Because based on the evidence presented, it seems you've been preparing to leave your husband, while continuing to benefit from the marriage, all while deliberately increasing your spouse's financial obligations." Sarah tried to cry her way out of it, claiming she had just been exploring her options, but it didn't work. The judge had already seen enough. By the end of the hearing, the judge ruled in my favor. The freeze on our joint accounts remained. Sarah had to pay her own legal fees, and I was granted exclusive use of the house until the next hearing. The judge also ordered Sarah to provide a full accounting of her secret account, and there was no chance for alimony or any major assets to be split between us. Sarah had no leverage left. As we left the courtroom, I finally turned to face her. Her face was full of shock and fury. She tried to approach me, but Tyler stepped in and stopped her cold. "Save it for your affidavit," he said firmly. Sarah didn't take that well. She tried to catch up to me in the hallway, but this time, I wasn't interested in hearing any of her lies. "Kyle," she hissed. "This is insane. You know, most of that was taken out of context. We can still fix this. Just call off the dogs." I didn't even flinch. "The time for fixing things was before you started planning to drain me financially," I said, my voice calm and steady. "Everything is in writing. Sarah, your own words." Her face went cold, the mask of victimhood slipping away. "You think you've won," she spat. "But you have no idea what I'm capable of. I made you, Kyle. I can destroy you just as easily." I just smiled. "You might want to be careful with the threats. This is still a courthouse." Her attorney pulled her away, and I walked out of that courtroom with my head held high. For the first time in years, I felt free. I had taken back control of my life.